All right. You got to get a microphone. That's Maurice is here, and we got Willard John here, and we have no other than Mr. Mosler Warren. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and I want to first thank my co-hosts that are here today, and we're going to see if we can challenge some of the issues you're dealing with. People get to know you a little bit better. And we got to continue this process because the incumbent has a tremendous advantage over most of you folks that are challenging. Community access channel, other things like that. Any event, let's start this thing off. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and if you're listening to us this morning, pleasant good morning, and a pleasant good evening if you're listening to us tonight. Maurice, you had some questions of Mr. Moser.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Helen.
Morning.
Good morning, Willard.
Morning.
And of course, good morning, Mr. Mosler. And I'm happy that I'm getting to come back to radio with Helen. So my question, and I've done this in the past when I've been on radio and TV and not a candidate, is to really get to know the candidates. And I was born here. I'm a native of St. Croix. My husband is not. I strongly say people born here and they belong here. One or the other, right? Born here, belong here. So what brought you to St. Croix?
The EDC program brought me to St. Croix. I had my business in Florida. I'd been there for 20 years, and had some friends who had come down here, or some business associates who had come down here and said I should take a look at it. And it was being sponsored by the Department of the Interior and federal government sponsored program, so it wasn't any kind of a gimmick or loophole. Mm-hmm. It was an economic development program. They were actively seeking companies to come down here, and so I applied to see if my company qualified. And when it did qualify, I moved down here.
You like it here?
I do. Yeah.
Have you gotten to know the people of St. Croix? Because you live on St. Croix, correct?
Yeah, quite a few. The interesting thing is, if you're trying to sell wine and you can't sell it, you don't lower the price. You raise the price to make it more valuable. Okay, so if you want people to come to St. Croix, you don't give them tax breaks and things like that to make it sound like there's something wrong here. The place is beautiful. You raise the price, then they'll all want to come down.
So how would you do that? Explain to me.
Well,
Explain to the people. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do we get people to want to come to St. Croix?
Well, first we have to decide we want people to come to St. Croix.
Right.
That's not a given. Okay?
That's
so
true.
We've lost 20,000 people since the refinery closed in the Virgin Islands and since the storms. And do we want to bring back 20,000 people? Or do we like it the size it is? Or do we want to make it smaller? These are all political choices. And they're important. And when you're looking at, you're determining your vision for what we do next. And they're very, very different types of choices. So now what I think I've learned from being here 15 years is that people in St. Croix don't want St. Croix to look like St. Thomas. Okay, they go to St. Thomas, they like St. Thomas, but they want to live in St. Croix. And so they don't want to become St. Thomas. They don't want 5 cruise ships a day, 20,000 tourists in the streets, hotels everywhere where there's traffic and you can't get along. And then and people get a little bit of your personality changes when you're flooded with tourists. There have been a lot of studies done on that, and you don't get that laid back lifestyle here. If you're driving down the street here, and people will stop to let you make a turn, and they'll wave and flash their lights. Okay, you don't get that other places.
And you like? I mean,
yeah. People stop and talk in the streets with their cars. I like that. Okay,
I like that too. I'm going to tell you that I do agree with you that most of the people who I know growing up here on St. Croix, we don't want to be like St. Thomas. So I'm glad you hit the nail on the head with that with me.
So I look at what is our strength, and so and our strength is our villas and guest houses. Now, we probably have 2,000 rooms or something like that, which is a lot. Now, how do we know we have so many rooms? Because the FEMA people and the contractors filled them all up. Somehow, a couple of thousand people came in with no hotels, and they're staying somewhere, right?
That's true.
Okay, and so we've got the capacity for that.
That's good.
And so to support that, I'm looking to support that business. Now, what's the main thing we need to support that business? And I think it's nonstop flights from New York. We had that before Hurricane Hugo, and places did a whole lot better. Hurricane Hugo hit, we recovered our infrastructure, but and actually faster than we did now, by the way, much faster. But we never got those flights back. And so, it'll be a great convenience for people here. If you want to go to New York for the weekend, you want to see a show, you want to see friends and relatives, just to get one-stop jump to get it.
So how do you get those flights back?
You go to the airlines and you tell them you'll pay for the seats if they're not filled. It's very simple. Now, you know, if you look at how much the average person spends down here and how much the government gets from it, it's way more than the cost of the seat.
Of the seats.
And the seats are probably going to be full anyway. Well, let's say you spend $1 million or $2 a year, and you're bringing in 30, 40, 50, 60 million dollars of you know, gross revenues. The government's getting it, the businesses are getting it, all the small businesses are getting it. We talk about what can we do to help small business, right? Okay, what does every small business need that nobody ever talks about? A small business needs people with money to spend.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
You've got a jewelry store and nobody has any money to spend. Good luck. You've got people walking through with a few $100s to spend, a few $1,000s to spend. Birthday, you know, vacation. You're going to be selling a lot of jewelry. You're going to be selling. Restaurants are going to be full and everything else. The other nice thing about not having a tourist town is that the restaurants depend on repeat business. Okay, so if you go to a restaurant and it isn't good, they're out of business very quickly because they need those same people to come back.
Right.
If you're in a tourist town, you got to have the lights and the flash so you get them in one time. After that, you don't care.
Right. You need those repeat customers.
So we get the best restaurants because they better be good or they're gone.
Where are they gone?
We vote every time we go in.
That's true.
No matter what kind of food it is, it's going to be good or they're gone.
Well, let me ask you. You're a prosperous person, and one of the things that I would like is shared prosperity for the people who live here.
Yeah.
Not only just certain people, but people who want to work and who people should. If people share in prosperity, a lot of ills disappear in a society. I think you would agree with that.
Oh, 100%. That's what I've done my whole life as an economist. Okay, I'm the leading progressive economist in the world right now, I think. And you can look it up on Google and you can see. I think you'll agree. So when I came down here, I saw exactly the reverse. I saw a government.
That's why I asked.
I saw a government, when they need taxes, who do they go after? They go after the people who have nothing and make it worse for them, okay? And they drive them off the island. And I said 15 years ago, what this government is doing to the people who elected them is driving them off the island little by little. They raise their taxes, their cost of living is a lot higher than it should be, and the average income here is half the national average.
You're right.
So how would you change that?
Okay, so, we taking turns on questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not. He is a co-host right now for me, especially since Holland walked out on me, but he'll be back.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, I have a whole list of things on my platform, and they're in detail, so I'll start going through them. We'll probably run out before the hour's up, so interrupt me whenever you want. Okay. I was speaking to the officer at the Federal Reserve of New York who wrote the country report for Puerto Rico.
Go ahead, sir.
Puerto Rico had the same problem of the Virgin Islands. The income's about half the national average. And here's what I said to him. I said, look, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, the territories, we get to keep our own income taxes. So for every dollar we send to Charlotte or Maui, we get $1 to spend here. Whereas Florida, for example, sends their dollars to Washington, okay, and they don't get to spend them in Florida. I said, and that is perceived as an advantage for the Virgin Islands, so that we should be doing better. Okay, but it's not. Okay, so here's why. When Florida sends $1 to Washington, Washington spends that money back in the states. There's no place else to spend it. And all their representatives and senators make sure they get their fair share.
Right.
And it's spent through contracts and everything else. Oh, Ruben? Turn the pages. Okay. It's distracting. Okay, so all the tax money Washington gets, they spend in the states. But for every dollar Florida or any other state sends to Washington, Washington spends $1.30 or $1.35 back in the states, not $1. They get bonus money.
Okay.
It's called deficit spending. The federal government spends more than they tax. Okay, so for every dollar they sent to Washington, they get $1.35 in spending. For every dollar we sent to Charlotte Amalie, we get $1. Okay, we're being shortchanged by our pro rata share of the government's deficit spending, which is not anybody's taxpayer money. And so that rightly goes to all the, on a per capita basis, to all American territories, states and territories, because it has nothing to do with whether or not you're paying income taxes. It's extra bonus money that Congress approves to help the economy. Okay, so how much is that? That's like $300 million a year for us that we're not getting. We're not part of that rotation. Now, you don't get cash. They don't send checks to the states. But what they do send is contracts. So there might be a contract that we could get to study, I don't know, some dengue or something that would go to the UVI instead of some university in Florida or Texas or somewhere else. There's about $1 trillion in federal contracts to go out. There's contracts to rebuild Apache helicopter motors when they break down. All these things. So we would be getting, some kinds of businesses that would be getting $300 million worth of federal contracts down here, which I remember at the time telling them is worth like 3 Jovenses. And I said, I think, and it's the same with Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is $10 billion that they're not getting. And yes, we get federal assistance. It's not like we don't get any. But think of a flower. If you wait for that flower to just about die, and then you give it a little water, and then when it perks up, you wait for it to die again. It's very different than when you just water it all the time. Okay, and so what happens here is we always get money for hardship.
Exactly.
Things go bad, the flower dies, they put some water on it to perk it up.
Right.
You've got to wait till it dies before you get more. It's a totally different dynamic. Okay, where the states are getting the deficit spending, it's $1 trillion this year, by the way, a regular basis.
Continuous
basis.
Right.
Right. Okay, so I said, look, I think if you do the econometrics, that's all the economic math, and go through the statistics for Puerto Rico and the USVI, I think that will entirely explain why our salaries, our pay, our average income it's actually just a little more than half the national average. And he said to me, this was an officer at the Federal Reserve in New York who does the country page. He says, I don't have to do econometrics. He said, I can just look at it. You're absolutely right. Okay, so I said, well, what do we have to do to get this changed? He says, well, you're going to have to get with your elected representatives, have to go to Congress, have to work through the Department of Interior and point this out. He said, I'm sure it's not like something they would dispute. And when I talked to some of the visiting Congress people who were down here, this was several years ago, they all agreed. They said, look, as long as I can run for office, my opponent's not saying you spent your taxpayers' money on the Virgin Islands or Puerto Rico. He says, I'm fine. We want you to succeed. We did not buy the Virgin Islands to run it into the ground. This is an example of American capitalism. And so here we have a technical oversight that's been depriving us of, if we got this right, everybody's income within a few years is going to be double.
Have you ever talked to the delegate about this?
I did. I spoke to the delegate, Donna Christensen.
And what about plastic?
I talked to Stacy and Deb. Stacy was my lawyer when she worked at Logan's office. And they all know about this. I talked to John DeYoung about it in his office with Ronnie Russell. I talked to Governor Mapp before the election to explain what he could do. And talked to I've had 3 or 4 senators in my office from time to time. And it doesn't happen. And when I ask, I get a very interesting response, and I can't tell you it's true or not. And they said, because it's your idea, they are not going to do it. They see you as a political rival, and so they're not going to do it. That's what they told me. Now, I don't know. That seems a little far-fetched, but there'll be a lot of things we'll be going over. I've gone through every...
Why not try it to see whether or not it actually works? Okay,
everything I'm proposing now, almost everything, I've been proposing since 2003 when I got here.
Well, you've
seen it. And so it's been in public knowledge, it's been public information, and it doesn't get done.
Do you think earlier, it's in my mind when you talked about the population.
Yeah.
Do you think we need to bring back the 20,000 people, or do you think the population now, as it is a population as governor?
Yeah.
You think would be the population that you can manage and bring prosperity to?
Yeah, I think you can have prosperity with 30,000 people. It scales. You don't need more, you don't need fewer. There are places, countries that are very small that are very prosperous, and countries that are very large and very prosperous.
Right.
Okay, so it scales to whatever population you want, but the markets aren't going to tell you this. It's not going to happen. If you don't decide for yourself, it happens to you. Okay, something will happen to us.
That's true.
one way or the other. Look what's happened to Puerto Rico. Oh, the federal government's going to take over. They're going to clean things up. That's not what they do. Promesa walks into Puerto Rico. They say to the government, how much money do you have coming in? Okay, that's all you get. Well, we're going to have to lay off 30% of the people in the hospitals, and people are going to die. Well, sorry, you don't have the money. So they do that. Okay, and they've had 1 million people leave. So the federal government has been indirectly, maybe directly, I can talk about that. I've talked to people in Washington, so I can say maybe directly responsible for having 1 million people leave Puerto Rico, and it's not over. I mean, the way they're going, how do we solve the Puerto Rican problem? Have everybody leave. Then there's no Puerto Rican problem. How do we solve the Virgin Islands problem? Have everybody leave. I mean, that's what the federal government does, because once you've cut back and people leave, then things slow down more. The revenues go down more. So more people leave, so it goes down some more. And they don't care. I don't know if you've talked to people in Washington. They put on a good show, but they do not care. There's no actual empathy for anything.
Warren, let's take a break. We're going to be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and then we'll flip the page a little bit. We'll be back in a minute. All right. Once again, you're back at Caribbean Country 93.5, and I've got Maurice James here, and we got Willard John, and, of course, our special guest, Warren Mosler. You know, I always keep saying, and I repeat it, the off-air discussions, they get to know you almost at the breakfast club here, let's call it that, or in the evening we're having a cocktail if you're listening. It means an awful lot. And some of it, I look at the qualities that you have and the successes that you have personally had or have creates a tremendous amount of discipline on your part. And I also can see the exasperation where so many of these concepts have been discussed with the powers to be, practically everybody. And, of course, there is a reluctance here to seize the moment and try something different. Obviously, what we're doing now is not working. Some of your concepts are really a challenge to the status quo. So when you're doing this, it's a point of repetition and exposing the public to this kind of thinking that you have. At this point, Willard, did you have any questions? I thought you were going to talk about education.
I want to know a little bit more about Warren and also his running mate.
Right.
So I think in 2009, did you not file to run for president of the U.S.?
You know, I started a web page on Facebook, and that's as far as it got. And
you didn't file with the Election Commission?
No.
Okay. And then 2010, did you run for Senate?
Right. So what?
In Connecticut?
Yeah. So
what happened there?
Okay. So I went. I had some friends who said I should run for senator in 2010, and I went up there and explored. I was never been a member of a political party, so I went up to the Democratic Party because I'm a progressive, and I thought that would make sense, and it was not a good fit. Okay, I go to this Stanford meeting of the Democrats, and they're holier than thou. Well, you know, what can we do for those people? Kind of attitude. It's like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
You know, social club. So anyway, so it didn't, that didn't work out, and so and they didn't have a primary, and they just nominated Richard.
You ran for
Redfield.
delegate here also.
So then I was at a meeting, and I ran into somebody named Peter Schiff, a Tea Party Republican, who was running, and we got in a bit of a debate. And Linda McMahon's photographer was there. She was running from Worldwide Wrestling. She was a Republican against Schiff. And afterwards, people came up and approached me. They said they were from the Independent Party in Connecticut. They've never seen anybody talk to Peter Schiff like that. And he just, turned around and walked away. He's totally lost the discussion. But anyway, and so they explained it to me, and it made sense. And I had an agenda back then. I thought the country needed a full payroll tax holiday. We needed to eliminate FICA taxes. These are the taxes that are taken out. It's the first 15.6%. The regressive punishing tax for people for the $1 that you earned, and then it stops at the time $106,000 or something like that. So it's a complete upside down regressive tax, and the economy was hurting bad back then. Unemployment was up, way up 10% or something, and the banks were failing, the auto companies were failing, and so what this would do, this payroll tax holiday, is it would increase the take-home pay of people working for a living. So if you're making $50,000 a year, your take-home pay would increase by $325 a month. Husband and wife, $650 a month.
Sure.
Okay, that was big money back then. It's still not big money now.
It is,
okay?
yeah, right.
Okay, for one. All right, and so, look, if you have a bank and you have loans, you have good loans, AAA, and then you have loans that are called toxic waste. Okay, so what is that? With a good loan, the guy's making his mortgage payment. With a bad loan, the guy's not making his mortgage payment. There's no other difference.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so if suddenly people are not losing their jobs and they're getting an extra $625 a month, they can make their mortgage payments.
Yeah.
And now the banks don't have a problem, and there are no bank bailouts. Same thing with the car companies. People couldn't make their car payments. Well, with an extra $625 a month, they make their car payments. Now there's no auto bailouts. So I wanted to fix the economy from the bottom up. And the people working for a living, I mean, there's no moral hazard here. These are the people who are supposed to get rewarded. They're the ones producing everything we have. Without them, we have nothing.
So with that now,
Yeah.
how does the government
Yeah.
realize their obligations from the taxes that they were
All right,
supposed to come
so hold that question for a second.
Yes.
Okay, so what happened was I got on CNBC, I got on Fox Business News, you can see it. You know, I got on, I was writing for the Huffington Post, you know, the progressive paper, and it got to Jack Welch on CNBC somehow, and he liked it. He was on with Jamie Galbraith, that's who told him he liked it. And people started talking about it, and then it got to another friend of mine from Kansas City, Troy Nash. He had a buddy who was named Ricky Love or something like that, who was President Obama's personal assistant. And he liked it. So he got it to President Obama. Obama liked it. And so they wound up actually passing it. And they took 2% off. They dropped the whole 15.6. They took 2 off.
Sure.
And so everybody saw their paycheck go up by $30 a
Right.
month or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was the only legislation passed by the Obama administration on a bipartisan basis. Democrats and Republicans passed it. Okay, so then I went home before the election. I didn't stay to vote or anything like that. I wasn't going to win. I only got like 10 or 11,000 votes because I met 11,000 people. I was everywhere. But so I considered it successful. We saved a lot of money here, $30 or $40 million a year for our population for 2 years. And then both sides let it expire because they were worried about the public debt, the deficit.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And so what happened was the Treasury made the payments for us. And it just added to the deficit. Okay, and so all the accounts stayed the same. And that was part of the proposal. Instead of you making the payments, your payments were cut, the U.S. Treasury made them for us. Okay, and that was the only possible tax cut that could have helped the Virgin Islands because that's the one we pay. We send like $200 million a year, I haven't checked recently, to Philadelphia to drain off this island. We keep our own income taxes, but we don't keep our FICA tax.
That's right.
That's a drain.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I thought it was a pretty successful venture, and came back a few months later.
You ran for delegate here
I ran for delegate here
What year was that?
3 times.
3 times. What have you learned from that experience?
I learned that if I come out with my proposals, make a good faith effort to win by information, win by getting the ideas out there. If I make a good faith effort to win that way, then I can sleep at night. It's just a matter of conscience. If I don't, it bothers me. I can't live with myself.
I want to, and I'm glad you said that, but you know, there's a rumor out there.
Yeah.
I'm from here, I'm on the street.
There's rumors here?
There's a
No.
rumor about you,
No.
that you're paying people to vote for you.
Yeah.
That's what they say. They say, oh, you know, Mosley is a rich man.
You know, by
He
vote.
he buy votes. You know, that's one of the things that you hear of. I mean, there are rumors about every candidate. I know because there were rumors about me. So the one that
I never heard. You want to share them with me?
the one about me.
Yeah, anyone.
But that was one that I heard.
Yeah.
Let me add to that as well.
First
Interesting.
of all, my finances are transparent, so if anybody wants to see what I'm spending money on, I'll show
Warren
them.
is not going to pay anybody for a vote. I'll tell you that. Okay, he's that kind of guy in any event.
I'll arrange so that you get a discount at the Chicken Shack for my
You know
chicken
what
Monday.
else they're saying? What else they're saying?
Indirectly.
Let me just say.
Well,
Spend a third of what everybody else
Let
spends.
me say the other one on the street is, you know, they can't quite figure out now. You're demonstrating your passion with this last series of questions regarding what you are all about. But the average person looks at somebody like you. You're really almost a financial nerd. You really, really got your act together. Why in God's name would you want to be in public office? Obviously, to go ahead and project some of these things, but either as a technical advisor, either on PFA or whatever, would make more sense, because the average person would say, like me, and I've worked for people just like you for some reason, at Innovative, and a couple of other folks that had a lot of money, and I used to say, my God, I'll swap my position for your bank account. Meaning, good God,
too.
You don't need anything. Now, that is kind of refreshing because as we discuss these things, I do believe you sit up all night looking at the ceiling, wondering, well, God, I would like to try this. And I think it's basically an expression you have for your community. It's that connect, again, what Maurice said, that would make a big difference. And I certainly wouldn't discourage you from continuing your effort.
Let me put it another way. Look, the WAPA bills are outrageous, okay?
Right.
They are.
Well, we see nothing yet. Wait a minute. There's going to be some news coming out within the next 5 days that is going to make everybody just go into absolute apoplexy, okay?
I know. I can,
No, it's there.
Yeah. Okay, so they can double the WAPA bills. I can pay my WAPA bills. I feel really bad for people who are being,
Who can't?
who can't. Okay,
That's right.
I just can't help it. And so, and then I have a plan to cut the WAPA bills in half, starting in 2004, before they went up. And so I feel just compelled to put it out there. I see what's going on with the kids in school and how we lose one generation after another. And I noticed something in finances. It's a way to get the children educated. So I have to I just feel compelled. So I tell the story about how I actually went to the hospital to see if they could remove my conscience so I wouldn't have to do this. But
That's a good one.
you know what they told me? They said, no, we can't do that until after you win public office.
That's a good one.
They'll be
That's a
waiting.
good one.
One of the other things that I look in a certain respect, kind of a track that both of us had been on. Remember, you're talking to right now, me. We're talking about me. Probably one of the biggest political losers going, okay? And I started in 78, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran.
1978?
I started running in 78.
78.
No, I didn't get elected.
That was 1978?
Yeah, well, no, that was 1878. In any event, just what I'm trying to say is that I had that passion. And, of course, it's very, very difficult. There's no question it would be like running somebody African-American in Hyannisport, okay? We do have our dues that we have to pay, and sooner or later...
It would almost be like running President Obama in the United States.
Well, you're absolutely correct.
Absolutely correct.
It was an enigma, and, of course, we now are feeling the results from an overreaction on the other side, which, in any event, we're going to go to another break.
Then we can talk about Lime Tree before we run out.
Look, I've got you on for another 6 hours. How's that? Relax. Now we're going to get into that particular issue. So if we could take a break at this time, you're on Caribbean Country 93.5. All right, and we're back again. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5. And I didn't want everybody thinking Maurice ran out of here to try to get away from Redfield. She had some other issues she was dealing with today, and we've got Willard John. And what I'm going to do at this point is get to some of the issues you really want to talk about. Not that we didn't want to talk about these other issues, but things that are bothering you. When I had the governor on here yesterday, your name was called on several occasions, one of which indicating that you yourself were looking for tax exemptions. You said earlier why we give these away anyway. Talk to me a little bit. Did you listen to what he was saying?
Yeah, I did. And he said that I had written that I was against tax exemptions for Lime Tree. And that's absolutely not true. I don't think he read it. What I'm saying is that the Lime Tree was paying higher taxes under the 2015 agreement.
Correct. And I've got it right here.
Right, than it is under the new agreement.
But yet, that one point that was brought up, and I'm only having a conversation with you. It was based in that 17.5%.
Right.
Okay, we were going to get that anyway. Now, we had the Trump tax package. Now, that was the justification for the modification and a different approach to this.
Wrong.
Well, okay, go ahead.
Okay. Lime Tree did not come to us for a modification of the tax. They did not come and say, look, we'd like to start the refinery, but because of the taxes, we need a modification. That is not what happened.
So what, it was just done unilaterally?
No. Yeah, it was. No, what happened was Lime Tree had already spent $44 million as they testified. This is after the tax drop. They had 700 or 800 people working.
Yes, they had it in the bag already, and
they were going
correct.
to be refining.
Right,
Okay.
and 17.5% was going to go automatically to us. But then the governor felt to front end load this is to have a cost share type thing. Go right ahead.
Okay. So then, where was the initiation for a new contract? Lime Tree didn't come to us saying we need a new contract because the taxes are too high. Okay. The projection was over $1 billion in revenues out of Lime Tree. And they didn't come to us and say that's too much, we need a break.
Right.
They were fine with it the way it was. It was the governor who went to them looking for cash, fast cash, okay, that said, hey, what do I have to do to get $70 million?
Right.
Okay, now. All right. And so this contract came about and then Lime Tree said, well, okay, how about if you cut our future taxes by $400 million, okay, and delay this deconstruction requirement for 5 years,
right,
and give us a zero minimum if we don't refine.
Right.
So now we have the option to refine or not. We're under 215. They had no option. They had to refine.
Right.
Okay. And so.
And you're correct. Not only that, you're going to pay back that loan.
Right. So they got to pay back the $40 million plus out of what taxes they get plus the reduction in rates. Okay. So it comes out to like 100% interest. So Lime Tree says, okay, we'll give you the money, 100% a year interest. Here's how it structures out. And the government says, okay, I need it bad now before the election. And so, but we can't sell it to the Senate this way. Okay, what we have to do is go to the Senate and say, look, because of the Trump tax cut and everything, Lime Tree needs this to be able to refine. So they totally lied, deceived. Lime Tree, a private corporation, conspiring with the governor to deceive the Senate and interfere with our governmental process. This is unconscionable, okay? And if you look at the testimony of all the senators, they got 5 minutes, it's on video, they all thought a yes vote meant that we would refine, and a no vote meant no, we wouldn't because the company can't do it without the tax breaks. It had nothing to do with it. Okay, a no vote meant that they would continue the way they were with the 2015 contract with the higher taxes and everything else, and they would refine by 2020. Okay, with the yes vote, they have an option. Okay, they can continue going to refine and at lower taxes. Okay, or they get a 5-year delay. They could delay it for 5 years because of the deconstruction delay and the zero cost for a minimum. Okay, and so that wasn't what they were voting on. Right, so the Senate was completely deceived, and the way I'm saying it now is the silence is deafening. The senators know this now. They know that they were going full speed ahead under the 2015 contract. Okay, they know they were going to be refining, and they now know that it was the governor who went to Lime Tree to get money. It wasn't Lime Tree going to us to get the contract modified. Okay, so this is bad all around, and that's what I had on my Facebook post. And then when the governor comes back and says, "Oh, so you're against Lime Tree getting a tax break?"
Well, you were extension. You were blogging back and forth between Matt. Am I correct?
No, it's just once with him.
Just once. Okay.
Okay. I was blogging I was on Facebook posting to other people. Just what I told you.
Sure.
And Matt comes on and said, why are you against Lime Tree getting a tax break? You're getting tax breaks. Okay. That wrong answer.
Right.
Okay. He didn't say, look, these allegations you're making are not true. He didn't say that. Okay. So this is tacit approval or tacit agreement with that what I was saying was the truth.
Yes.
And he's had a lot of time to disagree, and he hasn't. And it's not like he didn't answer at all. He did answer, and he did disagree. And so I think it's now obvious to anybody who's been following it that we've got a pretty serious situation on our hands with what happened. The Senate should be moving to rescind the vote, re-explain what's going on, that this is a vote for a payday loan in return for lower taxes without it. Okay, a no vote means
Right.
they refine based on the 215 agreement at 17%. A yes vote means we get a few bucks up front and cut their taxes by
Well,
10 times more.
Are you holding your breath for that?
Of course not.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now-
That's my favorite expression. You must be new here. So, but here's the thing. 3 of these senators are candidates, gubernatorial candidates.
I got the list right here.
We got
sir.
Senator Millen Young, who's running for governor, saying nothing about this and having been duped, fooled, deceived, defrauded by.
Oh, she didn't vote for it.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
She didn't. She voted no, right?
Oh, she's been speaking out on it. As a matter of fact, she's coming on after you.
Yeah, and she voted. She did vote for what she thought she was voting on.
Yes.
Now she knows that.
Yes.
It hasn't said anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And you had the other 2 senators. You've got Senator Hansen.
Yes.
Had no idea this was what they were doing to us.
Right.
That they were, that we had gone to Lime Tree for money. It's not that Lime Tree had come to us.
But
for
Roach
Roach.
didn't vote against it, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether they voted for it or
All right,
against it. They
so
were
in
voting on
other
the
words,
wrong thing.
I
I'm not
understand.
criticizing their vote.
How in heaven's name do you think a politician is going to admit they're wrong?
Well, you're talking to one right here who.
Well, you did. All right, and I have no problem at all. And I thought with
But look,
the discussion we
what
had.
I'm saying is how do you vote for somebody who's like that? I'm not saying they're not like that. I agree with you. You agree with me.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the fact that they don't come out and work to make this right.
Well, it was a rush, and this is part of the strategy. I've had to witness this.
Sure, but once you understand it, you go back and you can call a mistrial, right? Because you have a material change of information, and they're not doing that. And none of the other candidates, even the ones who are not senators,
Right.
are not saying anything. Total silence on this idea. What, are they silent on the idea that Lime Tree and the governor conspired to defraud the Senate? It's just of no consequence to them?
Right.
Like, how does that qualify them for chief executive officer?
Let's take a break now, and we'll requalify or disqualify when we get back on Caribbean Country 93.5. Thank you. All right, good morning again. You're on Straight Talk with Redfield, and you're on Caribbean Country 93.5. We're also on Facebook, so if you want, you can watch in. And, of course, we stream on biradio.com, and I'm here with, again, Mr. Mosler, and, again, Willard John, and we're having a nice rap session this morning. I hope you're listening to us for in the evening. I want to shift away, because I think you've completely clarified that, but you do understand that in politics it's all timing. I've gone through these exercises myself last minute, whether it's a budget, whether if we don't do it now, we'll lose them, and it's just generally the way everything operates. But I want to project you forward. You see the same pattern again, and when I was discussing this with the governor, we're talking about the pay raises. Now, you can imagine, unless the legislature can come to some terms, we can't sustain these raises at this point, okay? Reports, again, the one out of Washington, which was done on June 20th, 2008. That's the physical condition of the United States Virgin Islands. And then, of course, the Attorney General went on, and while the governor was away, discussed how important these raises were, but never addressed, again, the funding source. So when you see this in the chemistry of if you don't do this, you're against the little man, right? Okay. And they desperately need this pay raise, which he is correct on that. But we're talking about methodology. What would you do at this time, looking at this particular issue? And you are aware that the governor has sent down to the legislature a proposal on a pay raise. Unilaterally, one, he took care of the teachers, took care of the police officers, which I thought the methodology was they threw the unions under the bus. There was really no negotiations. It was unilateral. And then forcing negotiations for those that are been with the Virgin Islands for years to go through the regular arbitration process or the regular negotiating process for their loans, or not their loans, for their raises. So what is your thinking on, again, this particular issue?
So he said something very interesting that he glossed over here. He said, we have openings that we're unable to fill. Mm-hmm. And we need these people to be able to comply with federal requirements to get funding, which means that for the last year, not quite a year, 6 months, we have not been doing what it takes to properly comply with the federal requirements, and he's not even capable of managing the government we have in a way that will be able to actually secure these funds, bring them in, account for them, and make sure that they keep flowing. Sure. He can't even staff the government to get these people to do this.
Well, he also admitted, and I don't mean to interrupt you because I'm having a conversation, the Commissioner of Finance came on and appeared in front of the legislature and said there's no way we can sustain these pay raises. Now, when I asked the question, the governor spun and, again, came up with different sources of anticipation. But as you know, you don't always live up to your anticipation.
And he said there's $131 million of additional revenue coming in next year from the federal workers and the Lime Tree workers, okay? To have an additional $131 million, there has to be more federal workers next fiscal year than this fiscal year.
Sure.
Okay, and there has to be more. Okay, well, there aren't more. We've had the big influx. We actually have fewer than we had before. So how are we going to get more by $131 million in taxes, which would be probably $700 or $800 million of payroll? And Lime Tree already has 600 or 800 new people working. Sure. You know, we're not going to get that many more.
Right.
Okay, and when he said Lime Tree is going to be spending $1.4 billion, out of that, it could be as much as $1 billion is just buying oil for inventory to fill the pipeline. They need 3 or 4 months pipeline to process it. I think I don't know the exact number that this refinery is going to need. Which could be half of that or more. And then a lot of that money goes to buy equipment, which has nothing. There are no taxes on that. So it would only be the taxes on the income of the people that get paid.
Right.
So it doesn't come out anywhere near 131 million. As additional income. That might be the income we get from that, but we might have gotten 150 million this year. We're only going to get 131 next year. And he said we already have a deficit this year.
So your approach would be, how do we get it in balance?
The problem is we're not getting numbers that are they're representing numbers that aren't what they represent. Okay, and so they're not being transparent in that sense.
Right.
They're being transparent and throwing numbers out, but the context gets jumbled. We don't get it in clear context, so there's no way we can sit here and decide whether or not we can afford this.
The administration has their arms around this thing, but can we agree to get our way out of this? One, you either tax your way out of it, cut it, or grow it. When you're taking a look at that situation, and again, the clock is ticking, how would you solve this problem? And do we have an employment level we can afford?
So again, I've identified about $200 million of income sources on my proposals, and there are things like refinancing the debt we have outstanding with rum cover over.
Yes.
Okay, and where we can save $50 or $60 million a year, either doing it with the federal government, which is the ideal place.
Sure.
And we have the narrative to go with that. They've made our debt junior to their debt by $125 million on the disaster loan, and the market is worried about our ability to service the debt.
Correct.
Now, the reason they're worried is because even though the federal money is directed towards the debt first, like the governor says, what happened in Puerto Rico shows that can change.
Right.
And so there's a risk of that changing.
Well, he's claiming about the lockbox, blah, blah, blah. We've heard that all along, but you have always...
However, if the federal government buys the debt from the creditors, which it would buy at a discount right now, so it would be an implied rate of maybe 7%. I haven't checked it recently, but that's the last I saw. The federal government would have no risk because it's federal revenues that would be going to federal bonds. They're paying themselves, so they don't have to be worried about cutting themselves off. So if the federal government does this, it's a no-risk situation. Okay, and the 10-year Treasury now is under 3%, and if you swap it back to a municipal rate by using what are called slugs, which are Treasury securities used to secure municipal finance, our rate would be around 2%. Okay, this would save us 5% on $1.2 billion, $60 million a year of interest payments. It would also mean the $175 million of reserve funds he talked about. He says nobody's at risk because we have these reserve funds. We get that money up front, or we'd have less debt. We can do it either way.
Don't you think the beginning of this catastrophic situation, going back to that vote in the legislature where they did not, or they subordinated, again, these folks that have been financing us for years. I've always talked about I never put two fingers in the eyes of a banker. We've lost all our credit ratings, but don't you think that was what precipitated this report? And they're going to be end running in Washington, my understanding, to put us under a controlled situation by the feds. But you look back at that vote that took place in the legislature was the beginning of this problem. Remember, they said the federal government comes first.
The beginning of the problem was when we arranged is back with Diageo.
Okay.
Number one, we went to war with Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Big mistake.
Yeah.
We should have negotiated with Puerto Rico to give them part of the revenues in return for getting a larger amount. Diageo didn't need that large a discount. We needed it to. We were competing with Puerto Rico.
Right.
Just poor corporate finance. And so, if we didn't go to war with Puerto Rico, but we did go to war with Puerto Rico, we wound up with a small percentage of what we wound up with, 55% of the money. Okay, this infuriated the federal government.
Yeah,
they're not giving us this money to give it to corporate rum companies.
Sure.
This is supposed to be for us.
And the labor and the lobbying in Washington from other distilleries, whether it was in the rum or not, that drove everybody
and it
nuts.
Infuriated Puerto Rico.
Oh,
when they bought Seabourn Airlines and took our 100 jobs or whatever, it was a campaign issue of payback for Diageo.
Yeah.
Okay, so it started a war with Puerto Rico. It was bad. You don't do that. We need to work together with Puerto Rico.
Sure.
Not go to war with. We're in the same boat with Puerto Rico. So same ocean. All right. Number two, we then whatever stream of revenues we had, 200-something million a year, we securitized it, borrowed 1.2 billion, and used it for operating expenses.
Yeah.
And it's gone. So all the rum revenue money, everything benefit we got from Diageo is gone. We're just left with a few employees.
Well, all we're doing is churning. You know what churning is? Nothing.
Yeah, it's as if it never happened.
Right. Okay. So you put that basically on the previous administration.
Yeah, and so that's when it started. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we get into the sale of the closing of Hovensa. That was previous administration.
Yep.
Okay, and that was absolute disaster. That didn't have to happen. Mm-hmm. And then when it was sold, we left something like 120 or 150 million dollars on the table at the sale because we didn't understand the creditors that wound up with that money had no standing. Okay, and I discussed the legal situation afterwards. I didn't know about it until I saw the contract.
Sure.
And so that was an issue. We got 220 million, and same thing. This administration did the same thing that the previous one did, spent it on operating expenses.
Yes.
So it's gone.
Well, it was gone, and the legislature was wondering why they asserted their power.
So now we got another 70 million of cash for selling our property and our payday loan, $40 million payday loan at 100% interest.
Yeah.
And they're talking about they're going to put it in GRS and put it in a hotel.
Yeah.
What about making payroll?
Yeah.
We have he said we have an operating deficit. Don't you have to like, make your payroll first?
Well, that's a question I posed to the administration yesterday. What are you going to do about, again, the accumulated debt?
Yeah, well, see, it's accounts payable.
Yes, I understand.
Did he say what the accounts payable were? Last I heard, there was as much as $200 million from one of the senators.
Well, we got 3 or 4 days of cash on hand.
Yeah, that's because we wouldn't even have that if we were paying for Band-Aids at the hospital and we were paying for, tires for the cars. We just buy things and don't pay for them.
Right.
And the unpaid bills are over $200 million. That's our new source of borrowing. We find people to sell us stuff and then don't pay them.
Well, in closing, this is what you want, huh? In any event, Warren, I got to let you go at this point. Some closing thoughts to the listeners about how important it is, obviously, to go out and vote and obviously to vote for you.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me.
That's it? You don't even want to appeal to the vote?
You were asking me.
Absolutely. I don't want to speak to you. Remember, I'm neutral.
Right. Okay, so, look, I'm running strictly as a matter of conscience. I've got my detailed proposals for all our issues, which you can look up. We didn't have time to get into them, which includes educating our children, public safety, getting our power bills cut down, all the things that have gone wrong, getting our tourism product back up, restoring the economy, direct air flights to St. Croix, getting the cruise ships and hotels back online, yesterday in St. Thomas and restoring St. Thomas as the, to what it was and beyond. It can all be done. And, the big elephant in the room, of course, is the GERS.
Yes.
Where I've got detailed proposals on how we can actually make our payments on this thing without cutting anybody's benefits or raising anybody's contributions. And that includes contributing the $600 million of rum cover-over bonds that we authorized but never sold directly to the GERS, and recognizing that because we get to keep our own income taxes, when the GERS pays people and that money is used to pay taxes, that money needs to be credited back to the GERS. Our unfunded liability is not $3 billion; it's only $2 billion because $1 billion of that comes back to us in income taxes. All right, and so we're overstating the problem because we are stealing from the GERS fund. It's the only way to say it in a very short period of time. I'm not implying, I don't know what the legal code is on that. And it just goes on and on and on. And
I want to thank you for being here. Now, listen to
Warren Mosler, independent candidate for governor, running with Ray Fonseca from St. Thomas. And we're asking for your vote. Thank you.
And I want you to understand that now I am trying to be the equalizer here, and there are a bunch of folks, 7, that are running. And you are welcome to come on anytime you want, okay? And I'm going to do that for the other folks. We're not charging you to come on the radio. I do this because I think it's a public service. And I think in a lot of respects you cleared the air this morning. It was an intriguing, one of the best interviews I've ever had with you, seriously, with my counterparts here as well.
It's quite enlightening.
Yes, it was. So let me make a transition, Paul, if you can pull me out of here, and then I'm going to get Van Gogh and Millen on next. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5.